Sometimes I feel like playing first-person shooters and just turning my mind off and blasting enemies away. Kind of like in the vein of Doom or Duke Nukem 3D and all those great games from the mid-90s. In Forgive Me Father, it's a very similar throwback shooter with it adds a little bit of RPG elements. In this game, you either play as a priest or a journalist in a typical storyline where everyone is consumed by evil and you have to see why everyone's becoming zombies. It's kind of cliche, but it doesn't really matter. What will draw everyone to this game is the art style. It's really neat, unique, and it kind of looks like a LoveCraftian art style with a mixture of cell shading with the thick black lines. And the look of the enemies are really unique, and it looks really awesome in action. As you can see on the screen, it oozes a ton of style. And even better, all the levels in the game are really different from each other, so it really helps keeping the game looking fresh from the beginning till the end. The game has a really dark tone to it, but once the action picks up with your bullets flying everywhere and the blood spraying everywhere, it really gives a pop of color everywhere where it's saturated with reds and all the neon, so it really has a neat contrast between the darkness and the bright other colors, so it looks really good in action. It's definitely an eye-catcher. One of the common problems I've found in other indie first-person shooters is it'll look neat for a bit, but then it gets kind of old and stale because you keep seeing the same thing over and over again. But in this game, there's a ton of levels, and they all look so much different from each other. Like, look on the screen just how varied everything looks, and they're not afraid to use colors, so you're not going to get like the crappy Xbox 360 color palette where everything looks like poo brown and gray and bland. It's really saturated with a lot of bright colors, and it really makes it pop when you watch the game, so it's really nice to see. The artistic style they use is really great, and the lighting at certain levels really adds to the atmosphere. So for example, this one, when the lightning hits and shines the light through the trees, it really adds to the game. And some of the other levels, like the slime or whatever, this toxic ooze, how it's shimmering, it really does give the game a lot of flair. And also just the particle effects, or just the small touches, like how the red or yellow beams through the windows there, and the little things are falling down, the sparks or whatever they are. It just looks really cool. What goes really well with the awesome art style is the music. It's really good balance between the slower parts will have a really eerie and creepy music that's slower paced. It just adds to the atmosphere. But once you hit a point where there's a whole lot of enemies on screen, then a metal soundtrack kicks in, and your adrenaline starts pumping as you're going around blasting everyone with a shotgun. Like for example, I'll just play this clip here. This is a typical part of the game where it's slow, then it picks up, and it just gets really wild and fun.
I need to be brave.
The gameplay in this game is your standard first-person shooter where you're strafing and blasting away enemies. You are, depending on which character you choose, you do get special moves. And how your special moves work is the quicker you attack your enemies and shoot them, the faster your special moves will recharge. And some of the moves are really beneficial, such as like regenerating your health or having temporary invincibility, but I found some of the special moves to be kind of useless and I never used throughout the game. And at certain points, it's almost like you have to save your special moves, especially the invincibility, because it just gets so overwhelming that without it, you'll die right away. So like I said before, there's RPG elements to this game, so you build experience and gain levels the more you kill enemies. And I found that this to be pretty neat. You get a skill tree, as you can see on the screen, and you can either put your level up points into the weapons or your special moves or extra armor or health. And that was really neat. And what was really neat with some of the guns, you can switch how they work. So for example, a machine gun, you can either make it a more powerful machine gun, or you can switch it to being like a steady laser that shoots out. And I thought that was really neat. My only complaints about this system is that by the second half of the game, it takes so long to gain a level that you would have to replay the level over and over and over again just to gain one extra level, while meanwhile at the beginning of the game you're gaining experience at a much faster rate. So it was really hard to max out your character. On a good note though, they did in the recent update, or the recent patch they have a new game plus mode now, so you can replay the game with your leveled up character, and that was pretty awesome. And overall it made it definitely adds a twist to the game that some other games don't have. So it was a positive in my opinion. If I were to have any complaints about the game, it would mostly be towards the end of the game. A couple of the levels just become overwhelmingly difficult because they don't provide a whole lot of ammo. So there's certain times where I was stuck with just my basic knife and a handgun, and swarms of enemies were chasing after me, and some of the later level enemies are kind of hard to hit. So it's a bit cheap. If they were just to add a bit more ammo, and this was just on the normal difficulty, that would help out a lot. And I found a few of the bosses to be a slight bit cheap, but on a good note, if you are a noob like myself and you can't beat something, you can crank the difficulty down to easy or very easy, and it's way more easier, clearly, once you do that. And the difficulty isn't too bad, just aside from those few parts. For the most part, when I died, it was my fault, and I could tell that it wasn't like the game wasn't being too hard because I didn't blame my mouse and keyboard for not working. Usually that's how it works. Like when I suck at games, I blame everything else except myself. So I wasn't yelling at the controller or the mouse and keyboard and saying, "Yeah, it's not working. There's input lag" or something like that. No, when I died, it's because I sucked. But most of the times, my own skills got me through it, and I didn't find it too cheap. So that's good. I like that in a game. The story in this game, as I said, was pretty generic, where you're trying to find out why everyone's being consumed by evil or turning into zombies. It's told between levels and storyboards, and there is items throughout the level where you can look and learn a bit more about the story. I found the story to be pretty forgetful. It's nothing super fancy, but the in-between level cutscenes or storyboards or whatever you call them, they're okay. As you can see, they look neat. And I don't mind that there isn't much of a story, because I don't want to waste my time reading dialogue or watching boring cutscenes. I want to go and take out my fat aggression by blasting away zombies non-stop. And man, the shotgun in this game is satisfying. That's one of my general rule of thumbs when I play first-person shooters, is how good or bad the shotgun is. If it has a good shotgun, then usually it's a good game. And this one has a very satisfying shotgun. Most of the weapons are really good, but to be nitpicky, some of them are kind of weak and slow. Since this game is such a fast-paced game where people are flying around, I kind of wish like the crossbow wasn't so slow, and that maybe they did have a few weapons that were better at range. Because I kept going back to the shotgun just because it did so much more damage, and because it could actually put down the enemies. Meanwhile, some of the other guns just seemed a little too weak and just a little too slow. The enemy design is really neat. Like, each one of them looks really cool, and most of them have a weak spot. For example, if you shoot a guy in his backpack, he might go flying in the air because they'll explode. Or the better one was, there's zombies that walk around with a dead head hanging in his hands, and then if you blow off his normal head, he'll take that dead head and put it on top of his shoulders and grow a second head. It's kind of funny. I thought it was very interesting. And the boss designs, I'll show a few of the bosses, not all of them. They're just over the top and awesome. Really well done. The game has a fairly decent length. It took me between 14-15 hours to beat the game. And it has a whole lot of levels, and the good thing about this one is the levels are, I'd say, 5 to 10 minutes long for the most part, so it would be a really good Steam Deck game just to play on the go, because it's not too long, and you do get save points, and the save points you save at when you see this really creepy guy. Like, check out how weird he looks, but they are usually halfway through the level, and maybe sometimes there's a second one in the level. I found it very fair where the save points were and how frequent you could save, so it's not too bad with that. It's not cheap. When you really start destroying a bunch of enemies, it's kind of satisfying looking at the screen afterwards and seeing blood everywhere and body parts flying around or laying around. No, I'm not a weird serial killer and getting off on that, but I just thought it's really kind of visceral, because some of the levels are just really cold and stale, like all white, but then you see like a sheen of red from all the blood everywhere. It's kind of neat. Visually, it packs an impact there. My final thoughts on this game: if you're into first-person shooters that are single player, and love run and gun and nothing too deep, this is a great game. Looks awesome, sounds awesome, plays really nice, and it's a lot of fun from the beginning until the end. So I definitely would say this is a gem. So until next time, have a good one, and I'll see you around. Oh, Kermit.